Welcome back, everybody, to Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It's Thursday, May 7th, and we are continuing testimony, oversight testimony on the Enterprise Resource Planning State of Vermont IT Modernization Project. We're here today to learn more about how this project is being envisioned by VDOL, Vermont Department of Labor. So we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves. I always ask everybody who's in the room to introduce themselves, and then we will turn it over to our first witness for the record. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Sarah Campbell from St. Cloud.
Chris Morrow in the Windsor Benning. Michael Southwood, California 2. For Howland, Rutland 4.
Garrett Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Spilling 2.
Great, and joining us?
Lisa Goggin, IT consultant with JFO.
Robert Depper, General Counsel for ADS.
Great.
John Kelly, Chief of Staff, ADS.
Kevin Vianney, ADS.
Super. Rick Feltus?
Representative Feltus from Caledonia 3 from the Appropriations Committee.
Super.
Secretary of ADS, Denise Riley Hughes. Rowan Hawthorne, Policy and Legislative Affairs Director of the Department of Labor.
Chad Wozniak, I'm the CFO for the Department of Labor.
Jada Gleason, intern for Rep Kleppner.
Great. Thank you all for being here. And I just wanted to mention quickly that we are adopting Rep Feltus today for this hearing. And Representative Feltus, if you have questions, feel free. Yeah. So for the record.
Great. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Chris Winters. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Labor. And I'm happy to talk to you about our FARS system today. I know Commissioner Smith wanted to be here. She's at a conference in DC. It kind of came up last minute and was not able to attend last week. So I'm happy to be here on the department's behalf this year. She did submit a memo last week. Should be on your committee page either Wednesday or Thursday. I'm sorry, I forget which day. A lot of my testimony will come from that memo. I'll cover just about everything that's in it.
Great.
And I know you heard from the Agency of Transportation last week with some very, I think, similar concerns and issues that we'll be talking about today with respect to our financial accounting system. Our system, much like AOT's STARS, is called FARS, the Financial Accounting and Reporting System, very creatively named. And it operates outside the state's vision system. And it's our accounting system of record. And we've been using FARS for nearly 40 years. So it was brought online at the department in 1987. So I misspoke earlier. Star Wars came before 1987. It is not older than the original Star Wars movies. But it has been around for a very long time. Also with me today is our Chief Financial Officer, Chad Wozniak. Chad has not been around that long, but he's been around a lot longer than I have at the department, and can speak to some of the complexities and issues with FARS. I'm relatively new to the Department of Labor, been there about 6 months as the Deputy Commissioner, but a long history in state government for that with plenty of IT projects under my belt. It's my understanding that because the department has such complex federal awards and reporting requirements tied to those dollars, that we've been somewhat exempt from switching into the vision system because of FAR's unique reporting and allocation capabilities. And so we've used FARS for almost 4 decades now to stay in compliance with that really complex and very federal regulation that governs every single award that we get from the federal government. VDOL itself, the Department of Labor, is about 50% federally funded. And that number fluctuates year by year. Pandemic and post-pandemic, we sometimes had much higher numbers of federal funds, but generally we're around 50%. And I would say that the only time that the department uses the state's vision system is to reconcile in the aggregate. So some of the bigger picture stuff, the lump sums, that meets state requirements, but the rest of the time we're working in FARS. And so when it comes to that cost allocation, and that's Chad's bailiwick, that cost allocation piece, I'll try to explain it a bit, but if needed, I'll defer to Chad, the expert in the room. He's our cost allocation master. FARS is really good at applying indirect overhead and allocated costs across all the different projects that we have. And sometimes it has to be based on the office location, the time charged to the various awards, the floor space usage. It's all pretty detailed and pretty complex. And so that function in FARS is required by our yearly certified and approved cost allocation plan that we have with the United States Department of Labor. All of those, I'm sorry, did you?
Sorry, well, I do, because I just want to make sure I'm following along
Yep.
kind of as we go.
Sure.
So vision predates me. So I'm curious to know when and how the decision was made to stick with FARS and not use vision. So could you just fill me in a little bit on that? So we have somewhat parallel systems operating, and you at some point must have opted not to use vision because you didn't feel it would meet your needs, that FARS had more complex and detailed reporting requirements that are linked to the federal government, if I'm following.
That's right.
So can you fill me in a little bit on when and how the decision was made to not go with vision?
Sure, that I can't, but hopefully Chad can. That predates me, but there have been multiple decision points, I'm sure, over the last probably 20 years as FARS is a failing system. It's complex, it's expensive to maintain. So I'm sure there were several decision points along the way where we maybe wanted to try to move off FARS and did not. I don't know if Chad, you want to add any color to that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, good morning, Clay. And for the record, I'm Chad Wozniak, CFO for the Department of Labor. I was not here when that decision was made, when Vision came on board. My understanding of the decision is that because Vision cannot handle the cost allocation methodologies that we need as robustly as we use, the decision was made that we would stay with FARS and essentially reconcile monthly with the Vision numbers, the big picture numbers, but all of the accounting magic happens in FARS itself.
And so does that mean that I'm just curious about the implications for
Yeah.
how the state does its accounting in general and your own business practices at VDOL. So does that mean there's a level of complexity and detail that can happen at VDOL that then just doesn't translate?
That's absolutely. Absolutely good.
So you guys have it.
Yep.
But it's not talking to other systems.
That's
it's not.
correct. I wouldn't say it doesn't translate. FARS is our accounting system of record. So anytime we file a report with whomever, federal government, state agency, whatever, FARS is our backup information to gather the numbers to file those reports. And that is where those numbers live. And that is when we have an audit, which is every single year, whether it be a single audit or whether it be a federal audit, they are looking at our FARS system to look at details of that. So that is where our detailed accounting records live. Now, at the end of each month, we take, rather than saying, you have all of these, pennies going to all of these various different things, we have like one big lump number that goes over to Vision so that the big dollars can reconcile in the Vision system, so that the state's accounting system is then reconciled with all of the appropriations and things like that, so that level of detail is not lost.
Can you give me an example of the difference between the level of detail that you're tracking, that FARS allows you to track,
Yeah, sure.
and how it's aggregated up to the state?
Yeah, sure. And this will help. I'll talk a little bit of cost allocation. As Deputy Commissioner says, it's kind of one of
It's fascinating.
right. Like if you're into it, it really is fascinating. So we have multiple offices throughout the state. We have, at one point 15 offices throughout the state. We're now down to slightly less than that. And each one of those offices has to have its own, let's say, cost center. So our Montpelier office has its own cost center that absorbs in what are called indirect costs into that cost center, so that they can be allocated out to all of the projects that are live in that office during that month.
And the costs that we're allocating are sort of what you might call admin costs or.
I would call them
agent. Is that right?
I would call them overhead costs
Overhead.
rather than admin costs,
Okay.
only because USDOL has a different definition
Sure,
of that.
fine.
So, overhead costs. So a great example in the Montpelier office is the commissioner's salary.
Yeah.
Like everything that she does affects everything that happens in the department, and any project, any funding stream that is live during the month that we're doing our cost allocation should take a proportionate share of her salary dollars,
Right.
as well as her benefit dollars, as well as anything else that's associated with those salary or benefit dollars. So FARS takes that, and not just for the commissioner, but for every little piece that's in the indirect pool. And it divides it up by many different things, as the deputy commissioner said, sometimes by floor space, sometimes by salaries direct charged to a project, sometimes by number of telephones. That we have several different denominators for that. It then breaks that down and applies those sometimes pennies to the different projects that are live, the different funding streams. And then
you aggregate that for the state monthly.
and then, yeah. So each project is identifiable in our system by a 4-digit number. So every single funding stream we have has to be able to be traced from inception to closeout with every penny. So we have what we call the project code that we can follow all of those transactions through, whether they be direct charge or cost allocated or indirects, all of those other things. And that's all in the FARS system. All of that information, all of that detail. So when we're filing a federal report, that's where we find that detail to do that. So we don't have all of that detail in the vision system. We will have one big number of, this is the dollar amount that was charged to either this project or to this appropriation, depending on how it's done.
So the vision doesn't track by funding stream, by revenue stream.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, that I think I can understand that. That helps. So the vision is really only tracking
Total dollars.
and by appropriation, yes, but not by funding stream.
That's correct.
Okay. That's probably as much detail as it
Yeah.
More detail.
I apologize if it was a lot.
That's okay.
But I wanted to take that opportunity because that is the complexity of FARS. That is the reason that we were allowed to, from my understanding, the reason we were allowed to keep the FARS system is because of that complexity.
Okay.
And one last question. When was Vision acquired?
I don't know that. I would look to encyclopedia.
Yeah.
We probably have a lot of similar questions about then, how Workday is going to play this role.
Yeah.
So let's,
Yeah,
Sure. So
I'm sure we're getting to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are definitely getting to that. So, as you've heard, FARS was created at the time. It was, was actually considered the ideal cost allocation program. So in its heyday, it did this really well. It still does a lot of things really well. But here's the bad news. It's functional, but it's become increasingly clunky. It's nearing the end of its life. It was written in COBOL. I had to look this up, Common Business Oriented Language. That stands for. And that requires a really specialized expertise to maintain and repair. So there are very few people who have the knowledge of COBOL, who have general accounting experience and know the nuances of our system to help us reconcile the outputs when issues arise. We went through a very recent report that wasn't going well. We had to call in that expert who's retired from the Department of Labor. And a lot of people spent a lot of time trying to get that report right. So it's been near the end of its life for years now. And it's been revived many times. And we've gone through, so it needs to be replaced, bottom line. And I hope I'm not talking out of school when I say I was DCF commissioner. And as we were going through the budgeting process last fall, and I had taken the position to move over to the Department of Labor, Commissioner Gresham came up to me and said, I heard you're going to labor. Can you get rid of that FARS system? Was the first thing he said to me. That's what immediately came to mind for him, because they don't get the information and transparency that they need to do appropriate budgeting as we're going through the budgeting process, because the systems don't talk. We're sitting outside of the system somewhat. So we've gone through multiple attempts to gather the requirements and modernize or replace FARS, but those efforts have fallen short to date, largely because every time we do it, the system's full scope and complexity becomes evident and it kind of gets stalled out. I think there was an attempt in 2022, maybe 2023, when we captured a lot of the functions and requirements and we got most of the way there, but the effort was suspended without fully being completed. So FARS continues to limp along and do its job, but really not very efficiently or without a lot of risk involved. And so, as you all know, the enterprise resource planning effort is well underway to replace Vision, VTHR, and Vantage with the Workday project. And so Workday would be far more in tune with the modern world of government and accounting. We want to be in the system, in the same system as the rest of state government. And we're really hopeful that FARS is going to be replaced as part of the ERP project. One of the first things as I came on as deputy commissioner in October was to jump into the ERP team, been a part of the project management team, the project leadership team. Chad has participated in, and some people on his team have participated in a whole lot of ERP meetings. And the commissioner sometimes attends the executive sponsored committee meetings all over the past year. As I said, FARS is old, it's clunky, it's written in obsolete language, and it needs to be replaced just as soon as possible. So the ERP project is planned for a July 2028 go live. And from a FARS perspective, like that can't come soon enough. We really want to stick to that timeline because taking any longer would really increase the risk that FARS is going to fail on us and put the FARS system replacement in jeopardy. And as I think Director Jana Morse said to you last week, they're engaging in some contingency planning. We need to do the same at the Department of Labor. So with all that said, I'm grateful that I have a seat at the table on behalf of the Department of Labor. Much like AOT, I think we have a lot more at stake than the typical agency that's part of the ERP project. And so our participation in that effort is critical. And we're really excited about the next phase, about this pause and restart. And as the project goes from a phased go live to a single go live, we anticipate that the department's going to play a much more active role in the day-to-day project work.
So I guess I'm curious to know, I always have to bring things back to 101. So VDOL has significant federal requirements. So you guys have financial tracking requirements, you have audit requirements. And I assume that if you can't meet those requirements, federal funds are at risk.
That's right.
So this is a really important reporting requirement. So with that in mind, we talked about why you never switched over to Vision. And I am very curious to hear how VDOL has been sort of involved in the analysis. I'm interested in the process. So we've got Workday ERP, we've got this new product. How is it going to replace FARS? Can it replace FARS? Can you line up everything that FARS does to Workday? How has VDOL done that work? When did it start? Who's been at the table? What did the step-by-step look like?
Yeah. So the project has a schedule and the project has had phases. So it was a phase 1, phase 2, human capital management first, financials second. Our concerns are mostly, almost exclusively around financials. So we've been kind of waiting for that next step to make sure that Workday can do what FARS does, or at least most of what FARS does. That full-on assessment and gap analysis hasn't happened yet, but it's happening very soon. With the restructure of the project, we're pretty excited that that's going to get started really soon. So I would say we don't have a full picture yet, or we don't know exactly how far it is going to fit into Workday, but we're really glad to have a seat at the table and to be starting on that soon.
So at this point, that work has not been done. You don't know if Workday is going to work.
We don't know specifically if Workday is going to work yet. No, that's true. I know some other states have departments of labor that are using Workday. And we did do some requirements gathering. Barry Dunn, I think, came in and did some. So we have some of our requirements already gathered, but we haven't done that match up with Workday yet.
Sorry, and then I see other hands, but so at what point could VDOL wave its hand in the corner and say, this isn't gonna work for us? Like what?
Yeah, that's
'cause we're-
the question.
It's happening.
Yep, that's the question. That's what has, caused us some anxiety, but we were waiting our turn in the project schedule. But it's my understanding that, it's happening really soon. And so we're glad we're moving in the right direction with that.
I just saw a lot of hands. I don't know who was first. Rep Morrow?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the timing of this. It seems like, given the scope of the project and the money invested in this, it's awful late to have not conducted a gap analysis to understand whether this product meet your needs. Especially since it's been clear for many years that FARS is on the way out. He started this, what do you say, 2020 or 2021? Can you just help us understand why this didn't happen a year or 2 years ago?
The ERP project started, I don't know exactly when it started. It was before my time at Labor. It's been part of the project. Department of Labor has had a seat at the table. We've made our concerns known. Those concerns are being listened to. So now I think we're headed in the right direction. Bottom line, we want a replacement for FARS and we need it as soon as possible. So I think it's all headed in the right direction.
I just follow up on that. I think the question is, why would we make a decision to buy a product like Workday without knowing that it could do what you needed it to do?
I'm afraid I can't answer that one. I don't know.
And if I may, yeah,
Please.
I'm not sure that and I was not involved with the decision making on choosing Workday, but I believe the decision was made for the best usage of the state and not exactly to replace FARS. FARS is a hope. We hope FARS can go into the Workday system. Cost accounting, cost allocation accounting is nothing new. It is real GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles accounting. It is nothing new. So the Workday product should be able to meet our needs. We just haven't seen the dive in, so to speak, to understand that. The Workday product has many features. It has the budgeting feature. It has the human capital feature, the timesheet features, and all of those other things. Like that needs to be dictated by the state's needs, not by FAR's needs. So that to me makes a lot of sense where the state would choose a product that meets that. Can the FAR's system and really the AOT system as well, because they're very similar in the cost allocations is the big hitch on both of those systems. So can they also be brought in? 100% that is the hope.
Yeah. So I would, not to in any way try to be unpleasant, but hope is not a plan.
100% agree with that as well.
And, you say it has to meet the state's needs, not FAR's needs. Totally agree. But DOL and DOT are big part of the state.
I agree with that. I will say that initially when this project was rolled out, DOL was brought in on a slightly superficial level, and it was quickly realized by the team, the ADS team, that we needed to be brought in at a much more robust level. And to their credit, I cannot tell you the amount of hours of meetings that I've been involved with this team, because they quickly realized that the FARS team and the AOT STARS teams all needed to be involved with the different plannings. And even with the initial plan of the phase-in system where it was planned that human capital would be done first, timesheets and things like that.
Yeah.
It was quickly realized with, I think with our input and AOT's input, that there was such a tie-in between timesheets and cost accounting that we needed to be there at the table. And to the team's credit, we were brought in. There have been weeks where I've been literally in 50 hours of meetings just on this alone. And if I had to read between the lines, I would think that is one of the decisions that has led up to now going into a non-phase system. So everything coming in at once, so we can make sure that everything ties in and does in fact work for all of the state's needs.
So is it fair to say, I apologize, thank you. Is it fair to say that it seems likely enough that Workday will meet the bars and stars needs so that the most efficient path is to confirm or deny that? And if it's a smaller chance that it'll be denied, then it doesn't make sense to put a lot of work now into figuring out what's our backup if it doesn't. Is that?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I cannot speak for stars.
Yeah.
They are a little bit more complex than we are in terms of their cost accounting. But I would agree with that statement. Yes, that we are at that stage.
Thank you.
Rick Campbell has his hand up first.
Yeah, so I guess I'm curious about the cost allocation piece. And that's the reason why we have been using FARs all this time. So do we know that Workday has that capability? And we do.
Yeah. So I didn't know if there was more to your question.
Well, the next part of that question is, have we started trying explore the cost allocation capabilities in Workday and see how they can be lined up with the requirements that you have?
Yes, sir. Workday has cost allocation. We've been reassured that they have cost allocation. We've seen some of it. We also know that there are other states with DOLs, Departments of Labor, that are using the Workday financial product. Okay. So we are now literally at the stage through the last week, we've been talking with the various players, Workday, Guidehouse, and those, and proof, like, show me, give me the proof that it's going to work for us, and that's the stage we are in this week.
Okay, well, and that gets into my next question, which is about other states that are using. Is have you been in contact with other states that are using Workday, and do they meet the federal requirements that have kept you using FARs without any other backup workarounds, spreadsheets, whatever?
Annual cost accounting.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a list of those states. We have started to reach out to them. In fact, this week is when we've been doing that.
And certainly interested to hear how
We
they feel.
are interested as well.
Southworth and Tori.
No, he actually spoke to my questions. One good.
Okay.
You may have already answered this correct, but so am I hearing that you're not going to need to develop a lot of contingency planning, like we heard from transportation?
Yeah, I think that's still to be determined. I think the reality is that we might not get 100% of what we want from Workday, and we would identify the gaps. We would plan for it. We would see if we needed a contingency plan. I think there are a lot of lessons we can learn from AOT's progress so far. We would work with the Agency of Transportation, perhaps, on some collaboration around solutions for that workaround, if any sort of workaround is needed. But I think, we have to be realistic that it might not meet all of our needs, but if there is a gap, we'll do the planning and we'll figure out the right path forward.
I think the reason these conversations are so valuable for us is, I can't remember if I said this in our meeting with transportation last week, but although the ultimate responsibility for selecting the product and rolling it out and implementing it and making sure it works belongs with the executive branch, we have an incredibly important and equal role to play in oversight and in appropriating the money. And that's a responsibility that we need to take really seriously, because, when and if you guys come back and say, gosh, Workday's not going to handle this particular component, and, we $30 million to buy something that's going to handle that. And we need to get that into the budget for this year. These kinds of conversations are very important, I think, to make sure that we have the information we need to make good decisions about the money. So, yeah, Rick.
And I just wonder if whoever is most familiar with Workday can give us some sense of how customizable or flexible it is? Anyone have any sense?
Are you speaking cost allocation?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there turns out to be a gap, is that something that Workday can do a customization to fix, or does that require a separate piece of software because Workday's pretty live?
It is configurable, not customizable, so we're not going to edit and change the code. What we are doing here, and what you're hearing as well, is bringing the stakeholder group of the broader agency user community up to the top, because they're the ones that are operating across each one of the different business units. That is going into how we are configuring the environment so that labor has their environment and their instance. We're all in a single tenant, as we call it, but there is some opportunity for configuration specifically to feed off as well. There's been work that they've done over the last year in documenting ours. So that's the other piece too, is finding the legacy documentation and balancing the technical documentation with the business documentation. And so there are some significant existing gaps today, not related to the project gaps. The benefit is that we have a pretty robust AI division right now that is taking technical documents and leveraging our internal AI tools to identify where those business processes exist just by looking at the technical workflows. And that's helping aid VDOL as well. So it's not like there's no work that's been going on in the FAR space. It's really a matter of getting that comprehensive documentation down as to current state for them while we're moving forward into Basecamp for Finance. And so the Basecamp for Finance is really the meat of what you're hearing Deputy Commissioner Chad talk about.
Thank you.
Troy, I should know this, but there are other IT projects at the Department of Labor that are more customer facing.
Yes.
And where is that?
The unemployment insurance modernization, is that what you're referring to? That's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's a project that's going really, really well. I've been so impressed from day one at that team and how it's going. We're still on track for a go live this summer, and it's really going to transform how employers interact with it, how claimants are able to operate online for both initial and weekly claims. It's going to drive down a lot of the trouble that we have with our call center. We're really excited about that. So coming soon.
Great.
Brett Feltus.
From an appropriations point of view, I appreciate your comment in terms of looking at how much this total project may cost and how it all fits together. And I think we have to remember that when we started talking about ERP back in appropriations in 21, probably a little bit before then, the ERP is obviously to cover all of government and to connect all of government so that you know where your costs are, where your spending is, and budgeting and human resources and all of that all rolled together. And it was known at that time that there are specific requirements in every little department, and most of them could be adapted easily, not easily because you got to get the people involved, and that's a whole other process. But nevertheless, an ERP project would work very well for most parts of government. We recognize that there's specific financial detailing in labor and in transportation, just because of the federal money coming in, that we would have to work around, and hopefully the ERP, and hopefully I know is not the right word, but that it would take care of the majority of those things and help tie all those departments together. If it turned out there was something specific in those two particular departments, we'd have to figure out what to do. But I think we need to look at the bigger picture, that this ERP project was put together for the whole state government's functionality. This $9 billion budget we have and 8,000 employees, and all of this needs to be tied together. And we felt that the ERP project would do that, knowing that it's a huge undertaking to change everybody's systems and get all the people changed and that sort of thing. But that for government functionality, being able to keep track of what everything is doing in the government, we were better off having one single system. And if necessary, you do some pieces off that are separate. And I recognize transportation and labor are important because of their federal funding, but we get tons of federal funding in AHS.
I was just gonna ask you about that,
That's
like,
half
doesn't
our
most of
budget.
it flow through AHS?
So it flows, I guess the cost accounting is not the same. It's not a different kind of, I mean, it's not so specific in terms of the reporting that has to go back. There are tons of audits that they have to pass for all the federal funding, but it's a different type of accounting that is required for those services. So a big part of what we looked at is, can we manage AHS's processes? And yes, we can. And there are several customer facing things within AHS that are not part of ERP, but they are part of their customer facing sorts of things. But in order to keep the whole government collected in terms of its finances and its people and knowing how each department affects the other, it was felt that one single system would be better.
Are there other states that have a single system that use Workday and it meets all of the requirements? Because every state has a labor department, every state has a transportation department, every state has a human services. They all interact with the feds. So are there other states that have successfully implemented Workday and it has satisfied all of these needs? And how many other states are there? Have we been talking to them? I mean, I guess that's another dimension there. Maybe this is for the secretary.
I'm happy to answer that. So there are other states. We've been talking with those other states. If you've seen one state, you've seen one state.
Right.
So as far as how state government operates, every one of us is very, very different. And so we've taken aspects of what we've learned about each state. And keep in mind, there are other states that are going into single comprehensive platforms that are not that are not Workday, and we could be having this very same conversation.
Sure.
It's a very complex, challenging project.
And how do we know Workday is the right one?
We know Workday is the right one. And I think that we would be saying that if it was ABC software company, or it would be some other product. What you're finding though in each one of those states is that politics are definitely at play and people and process are at play. So I think the technology piece is the easy part. It's really about authority, roles and responsibilities, and the gaps in process. We're also, from a size perspective, one of the smaller states. So when we look at where and how this is operating, we'll say, I know that Rhode Island has come up. Where they were coming from versus where they went to is vastly different. Again, it goes back to the C1 state, very different from where we're coming from. The state of Georgia has done this. They have rolled out aspects of this through a very similar model that we are taking, and they will consider themselves to be fully live July 1st, but they're already operating in that environment today. And there's a number of other ones, but I think that it goes to the, if we want to find problems, we will find problems. If we want to see successes, we will find those successes. And I think that we've been focused on lessons learned from where we've seen our peers have challenges. And most of those challenges have been gaps in the people and process space.
Okay, one other short question. Are we anticipating an overlap of that period where we're going to be using both our legacy systems and Workday?
There is a series of, and I think that we looked at possible 5 rotations of payroll where we want to go through 5 payroll steps in order to have 0 errors before we go live. That'll be that balance period. So it's just before go live where you'll see that, but we need to have a specific cutoff at the beginning of the fiscal year so that we have all transactions operating within the fiscal year in one system.
But for some months before that, we'll be operating parallel.
So the anticipation, so let me hypothetically say we would have the environment built for 6 months and allow testing and work to happen in those 6 months. That's when we will run those 5 tiers of payroll cycles, just before go live. That's when you'll see the overlap, but once we say it's go live, the old system turns off.
Yeah, sure. I know, I'm sure that there is a problem that has to happen. I'm just hoping we have a sufficient overlap of parallel
We have a
systems.
sufficient, we do. And we've actually, as we've talked about, avoiding the need for rework and going to that single go live, that's actually going to save a lot of time, energy, effort, and heartache, I think, for folks to be able to configure it once and have those systems and processes tied together. That we will be able to see the benefit of extended testing time in that period because of the ability to go with a single go live.
Rep. Sabili, did you bring hand up?
I just want to make sure I understood the answer to Representative Campbell's question of how do we know that Workday is the right choice? And I think you said we do know. And then you said, I'm not sure that I understood how you know. You were giving examples of other states.
We've gone through quite a bit of verification, testing, requirements gathering, technical requirements gathering. And I know the decision happened before I got here. It happened 2 CIOs ago. One CIO ago had an opportunity to revisit it as well and had done so and agreed to move forward. And I had the opportunity with Secretary Clark to do the same thing. And everything pointed to the technology will function and work for the state of Vermont, for the needs that we have. It is the closing the gap on the people and the process side that we have a lot of work to do. And that's, I think, where we're going to continue seeing some of our challenges.
So specifically to answer that question, what I'm hearing is that since the original decision, 2 CIOs have revisited that decision. And each independently has verified that they believe that the system can work.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on looking back, but Rep. Feltus was saying when you're looking at this in 2021 initially, right? So that's 5 years ago.
In 2019.
2019, okay. So what undermines my confidence a little bit is that there was no gap analysis done to see whether this product is going to meet the needs of FARs, 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. And it's from an oversight perspective, it's a little hard to understand. So, I mean, we don't need to rehash everything, but a little bit to give us some context and confidence moving forward that you understand my question.
I do. And I think that whether it's to the satisfaction of individuals who are on front lines reviewing the gap analysis, there has been work done. And what one individual may consider that gap analysis or another, it seems that there's varying opinions on that, but there has been a gap analysis done. And you built it into the project plan to cover that last mile of that, which is part of what the first 3 months of the, we call it base camp, but it's basically the closing the gap on the details of those requirements as well that are critical to the project. So we've already done that on the HCM side, and this is now we revisit this in a more comprehensive base camp once we restart the project again. And we'll do that now with the finance piece. And so we do have the gap analysis. The work that was done with STARS was done through 2 independent third parties. The work that was done with FARS was done internally, both with BDOL, with ADS, there's documentation there. And the work that has been done, I think, over the last year with ADS and the BDOL team around the documentation of the existing system. I think that that's been a big gap of the existing environment, has also aided in filling in some of those gaps. But I think if we were to maybe define what you would be thinking about as a gap analysis versus what the project team is looking at as a gap analysis, we may find some varying perspectives there.
That's actually, oh, go ahead, because that was what I wanted to ask about. Go.
Well, Deputy Commissioner Winters, I think, just said that they're just starting the gap analysis now or recently. So maybe we should define what a gap analysis is, because I don't necessarily have a clear definition of that.
Before you answer it, I think that's where I'm bogging down a little bit too, because not having worked on gap analyses, I feel like I'm hearing two different things, and maybe it goes to a different understanding and different answers to, do we have a gap analysis? So I'm hearing, definitely have heard that there has been a list of requirements compiled, right? Or like, this is what our current software does, and this is what we need our future software to do. In my mind, that's a list of requirements. I'm envisioning a gap analysis as being something different, 3 or 4 steps beyond that, as being a very detailed report on, okay, we took your list of requirements, we have looked at Workday, and for this requirement, it can do it. For this requirement, it can't do it. For this requirement, it can do it, but we're going to need to add X, Y, or Z. So I'm envisioning a much more detailed thing that answers all those questions about whether Workday can meet your needs. And that's what I'm not sure if we have now. In my mind, that's what a gap analysis is. So maybe we're talking past each other.
For what you described, there are aspects of that have been completed. The deep dive of that goes into Basecamp. So that's the work that we are pending start on.
And what's Basecamp again? I'm sorry. Basecamp.
The first 3 months of that phase will kick off. And so we're about ready to start the finance side, which is now a single go live. So it's a comprehensive merged work stream effort.
Wait, I'm sorry, Basecamp is a phase of the project, is that what you're?
It is a phase.
Okay.
It is
also-
that
it also happens
next
to be a
layer,
news
like you would
software.
think 4 layers down.
Yeah.
It's that deeper gap analysis that's
Okay.
done in real time with all of the stakeholders at the table. So it won't be exclusive to FARS or STARS. It's actually going to dig into all of the agencies in different ways, because there's more than just STARS and FARS. I mean, we have
Yeah, no, it's
over
big.
100
Yeah.
different connections into Vision and VTHR right now through other systems that we would love to retire those connections.
And I'll just say my use of the term gap analysis is a loose use of the term, I guess. What we've been wondering is, can Workday do this? And we've been told yes. But what we're looking for is that very detailed in the weeds, like, we have this report, can it run this report? And we've gathered the requirements on what the reports are, but we just haven't done that deep dive yet, and that's what comes next in basically.
And if I don't, is it okay? If, for what Deputy Commissioner Winters is saying regarding the reporting piece, we're going into a system that the data is there, we can report. And that's the biggest piece. The current system does not have the data there. We talked about cost allocation. It doesn't have the capabilities for cost allocation. But if the biggest concern is the reporting requirements, that is what this system is. It's just a matter of making sure that all of the data has a single source in there. So the single source record for BDOL is not Vision. The single source is FARS. And so we're now bringing the single record of truth into one system, which is Workday. And once the data is there, we can create any report mechanism to be able to pull record and data.
Secretary Rodriguez, how confident are you in the agency's ability working with DOL? And actually, I guess I should ask first, whose responsibility is it to make sure that system continues to function?
Which system?
FARS.
BDOL and ADS.
Okay, and so how confident are you in ADS's ability, DOL's ability for that system to make it to the transition?
I'm not confident. And I'm confident in our abilities.
Yeah.
But the fragility of the system goes far beyond ability. It goes into a system and technology that you can't source even on eBay anymore.
So I apologize for being distracted. I have something on the floor today, but so if this has been covered, I apologize. But what is the backup plan?
You speak, I mean, we have people who we contract with who can work on it with a total system failure. I don't know if there's.
We would treat it like a coup. We would treat it like we would an emergency management situation where we would source 389 resources within ADS and as many resources that we need within VDOL. And we would have to figure it out.
389 resources.
Resources,
Means people.
yes, people. So we would,
And a COOP is what? I'm sorry.
it's the,
Continuity of operations.
Okay.
yeah.
So it would be an emergency. We would treat it as an emergency.
100% be an emergency. Basically, we would be required, we would stop. And we've had a couple of starts and stops in some environments that we would consider to be in that state that we don't actually come out on the right side of it. But as far as how long that would go for, I can't.
So you may or may not answer this question. How would we find out about that
When it stops working.
if we had kind of a
Yeah,
situation?
we do have really strong contracts in place with resources and contractors, both on the development side and on the mainframe side that we know that we will get support,
I apologize.
but yeah.
We was the legislature.
Oh, when would?
How would we?
When would the
find out?
legislature be notified?
When would you like to be
When and
notified?
how?
If we have a situation that requires, what you're describing, I think it's appropriate for the legislature to know that that's happened. It would be great to know that from the administration rather than from our constituents.
In many
The
times
media.
you find
But
out
yeah.
sometimes before we do.
Okay.
BT Digger is always a good source of information through there as well. But what I would say is once we are up and running on our COOP plan, depending on where in session we are, we would notify John Top, JFO, or, if you were in session right now with this committee as well. I have been communicating directly with the chairs of both the Senate and House committees. But I really hope that we don't get there. So
We all do.
I'm assuming the Secretary of Administration would certainly be aware of problem of that type and would be informing the governor and would be informing whoever else needs to be informed. That process is underway to recover the system and to work with the system in an emergency process.
Yeah, no, I was specifically about the legislature. I mean, I'm sure the administration as soon as it becomes apparent.
Brett Campbell?
Yeah, I just have another specific question about timing and gap analysis, whatever, however we define it. Deputy Commissioner Winter has said that you're sort of starting that process now. Can you give us an indication of what the timing is? How long do you expect that to last? When do you anticipate having sort of an answer to the question? Is this going to work? Maybe somebody asked that before, but maybe you could say that again.
There's been a pause and there is a restart coming. I guess I would defer to the secretary on kind of the timing of that. We had, we were all in a room together last week for 2 full days. Get the project restarted and moving this I think a very good direction, but I'll defer to the secretary on the reschedule.
Restarted. Can you amplify that a little bit?
Again, I'll defer to the secretary on that.
it's stopping the multi-phase
I see.
approach and
Okay.
going into the single go live.
Yeah. So that shift. Okay.
Yes.
So can you talk about the timing for doing a more detailed analysis about, is this going to work? Will it require workarounds? So,
Once we are done with our negotiations and we are able to find the funding back again,
negotiations
it would
report.
be negotiations with Guidehouse, because this would require our first amendment on the contract. It would be 2 to 3 months from that date.
And what do you think that date would
In
be?
my perfect world, we would have started a week ago and we would be done in July, but it's not a perfect world. And so.
A matter of weeks, not months.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so by the end of summer, we should have a good
That would be
idea.
my hope.
And would you anticipate being talking to Jai Talk at that point?
Very much so.
Giving them an update?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Tori?
So quick question about a doomsday scenario where there was a delay and or a real crisis. What happens with the federal reporting requirement? Because it sounds like it's monthly. Like, is there some sort of grace extended to a state that's in duress like that? Or?
That's a great question. I really don't know if Chad has ever experienced.
Oh, yes, yeah, we experienced that. We've not experienced catastrophic failure, but we have experienced delays in month and quarter closings. And typically that is, there's a process that I, as the CFO, go to my federal project officers and I let them know that we are having difficulties and they give us a grace period on that, depending on how difficult the problem is. Our reports, so we have some reports that are monthly, but the majority of them are quarterly. So that would be on, each quarter we kind of grit our teeth and we go into the process and I am very close with my regional, my USDOL regional federal project officer. We talk daily. So as I start these processes at the end of each quarter, I'm very much keeping them in the loop and on how things are going. They have some leeway to give us extensions and those kinds of things as the occasion occurs. If we were talking a super long delay, like months delay in a closing, I don't know what would happen. I don't know what that would then go up to the national office, and I don't know what the reaction would be to that.
Thanks.
So I guess.
1 second. 1 second too long, Madam Chair.
I guess the bottom line is, we're confident that Workday is going to work.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I can't say 100% confident, but sure.
I'm confident. I'm confident that it's going to work. Are we going to hit 100% capture on all of the things that they're doing today? Probably not, because that's what business process transformation is all about. Will we meet federal requirements? Will we bring them into a modern transformative approach on how to do things? Yes. And so is that going to require a little give and take on, well, this is how we do things now. We're going to have to do things a little differently. The reality of that is real.
Yes.
So I'm confident about that. Is there one aspect of the system that we may not be aware of that doesn't fit under the umbrella of ERP? That's possible. And those are the edge cases that I'm talking about, which is, I think we talked about this with STARS as well, with Jana, is there's always going to be that little, we did something different in the system that has absolutely nothing to do with what we need to do now. What can we handle that? Over the last 9 years, we have gotten very strong visibility into all of the systems across state government, and there is always an opportunity for repurpose, collaboration, and reuse. So if we find similarities between AHS, AOT, and VDOL that aren't considered ERP, but they have very similar needs that we can consider aligned, there's no reason why they can't all satisfy that with a single thing.
Yeah, I guess the question isn't so much, will we have to change how we do things somewhat?
Yeah.
The question is Workday going to fulfill all of our real requirements? We have requirements about accounting and tracking and auditing and providing data reports, whatever, to the federal government. Those are requirements. So are we satisfied that Workday are you satisfied that Workday is going to meet all of those base requirements?
I'm satisfied it will meet the base requirements.
Okay.
Oh, we got that.
Great. Why don't we take a little break before we discuss community scale geothermal progress in Vermont? So let's go